Today we are learning about apostrophes, and apostrophes can be a tricky little mark of punctuation. It's one of those things you think you know how to use it, but you don't always know all the rules. So let's go over this. The primary use of apostrophes is to indicate possession. We'll talk about contractions too, but let's just focus on possession for now. So I'm basically going to go through all the rules of using apostrophes with singular versus plural nouns, and particularly when we get into plural nouns, it can get a little tricky. So just hang in there with me. Even if you think you know how to use apostrophes, there may be a few little nuances that you're not familiar with. So when you use an apostrophe with a singular noun or an indefinite pronoun, you add an apostrophe S. So in a sentence like this, the writer's knack for creativity was well known. So you have a singular noun, writer. This writer possesses a knack, so you add an apostrophe S. The same with this sentence. It really was not anybody's fault. So the word anybody is an indefinite pronoun, just like someone or everyone, everybody. Those are all indefinite pronouns, and the same goes there. You just add an apostrophe S to indicate possession. Now, sometimes you will have a singular noun that ends in an S, and that can throw you off a little bit. Typically, this is a name. And here's the thing. When you have a singular noun ending in S, you actually have the option to either add just an apostrophe or an apostrophe S. So whichever way you choose, you simply have to be consistent. So for example, the name Gus is singular, but it ends in S. Gus's time in detention was long and boring. Now that may look weird to you. I think typically people will choose the other option of just using the apostrophe. Like here, Jesus's parables are still relevant today. Both of those are correct. However, if you're writing a paper about Jesus, then you just need to be consistent in the way that you use it. I actually like the apostrophe S because we pronounce both S's. Like I say Gus's time in detention, so it makes sense to me to have the apostrophe S there. But both are correct. I'll give you one more example. It's not always a name. You can have a singular noun such as bus. Did you see that the bus's tires are all flat? And again, that may look weird to you, but it is correct to use that apostrophe S. However, you can also just use the apostrophe if you're more comfortable with that. So let's get into plural nouns. Now, plural nouns typically end in S. We talk about one boy, two boys, one dog, two dogs. We use an S to create a plural. Not all plural nouns end in S, but most of them do. In which case, you just add an apostrophe at the end of the word to indicate possession. The girls' room is upstairs and the boys' room is in the basement. And this is really important to get correct because if you put the apostrophe in this sentence, if you put the apostrophe before the S, then the assumption would be that you're just talking about one girl. By putting the apostrophe after the S, we know that you as the author are discussing multiple girls. The girls' room, I have two girls. The girls' room is upstairs. And the boys' room, I have three boys. The boys' room is in the basement. So it's really important for clarity's sake that you know that rule, that whenever you have a plural noun ending in S, you add an apostrophe. One more example. Have you seen the kids' latest antics? So this way we know you're talking about multiple kids, not just one. Okay, so most plural nouns end in S, but we do have a few exceptions, such as one woman, two women, one man, two men. So what do you do when you have a plural noun not ending in an S? Then you use an apostrophe S, and this is really what makes it confusing. So the girls' room is upstairs, apostrophe at the end. However, the women's restroom, such as in this sentence, is down the hall. And because women doesn't end in S, we do apostrophe S. You don't have to move the apostrophe after the S here because we know that word is plural all on its own, just because that is the word. Women is plural. I hope that makes sense. It can be kind of confusing. Another example, I noticed the geese's formation was irregular. All right, one goose, two geese. So I used apostrophe S there, and the apostrophe goes before the S. So if you can get these two rules that I have on the slide right now, the difference between plural nouns that end in S and plural nouns that don't end in S, if you can get that, then you are a long way towards mastering apostrophes, because this is probably the trickiest element. So if you memorize anything from this lesson, memorize these two rules and make sure you understand the difference. Joint possession is when you have two people possessing the same thing, and so you only need to add an apostrophe S to the last noun, such as, Joe and Tammy's wedding was beautiful. It's the same wedding, they both have possession of it, so we only need the apostrophe S after Tammy's name. The same goes here. The bride and groom's honeymoon was in Hawaii. So that's joint possession. Excuse me. We also have individual possession when you have two or more nouns in a row, but they're each possessing different things individually. And to differentiate that from joint possession, you want to add an apostrophe S to each noun. Let me give you an example. Bob's and Mark's apartments are on opposite sides of town. So Bob and Mark each own their own separate apartments. So to make sure that's clear, we say Bob's and Mark's apartments. Otherwise, if we said Bob and Mark's apartments, it would sound like they both own the same apartment. But we are trying to communicate that they own different apartments. The teachers' and the students' views of the situation were different. Two different views, so we need apostrophe S next to each noun. All right, so those are the basics for apostrophes and possession. We also use apostrophes in contractions, and I'm just going to go over this really quickly because you guys know how to make contractions. I can't believe you ate a whole pizza. The apostrophe represents missing words when we smash words together, cannot, just for the sake of ease of language, smoothness there. You guys know how to do it. Didn't realize how hungry you were. Pretty easy. One thing to remind you of as far as apostrophes and contractions, and this is kind of confusing, but just remember that the possessive of the pronoun it does not use an apostrophe, only the contraction of it is. So the roach was wriggling around on its back. And the reason this throws people sometimes is because its is possessive, and when we think possessive, we think apostrophe. However, for clarity's sake, because the word its is also a contraction, it is a gruesome sight, we do not use the apostrophe with the possessive form of it. It's a possessive pronoun all on its own. And furthermore, you do not use an apostrophe with any possessive pronoun. Sometimes students will find themselves adding apostrophes to words like hers or ours or his, and those words don't need apostrophes. I think this unidentified notebook is hers. No apostrophe necessary. The word hers is possessive by definition. It does not need an apostrophe to indicate possession. Another common mistake with apostrophes that students sometimes make is using an apostrophe to form plurals, and you never use an apostrophe to form plural words. This happens a lot with last names. So like in this sentence, the Petersons are going on vacation. There's no possession there. We're just talking about the Petersons, plural, more than one Peterson. So there's no apostrophe needed there, okay? If we were talking about something the Petersons owned, like the Petersons' vacation was enjoyable, then you would use an apostrophe. But if you're just talking about them as a plural, a group of people, then you do not use an apostrophe. So that's all I have to say about apostrophes. I have a game uploaded for practice, and hopefully that's helpful to you. Let me know if you have any questions.